Now, President William Ruto has made very many promises and pledges to the country from the moment he was sworn in and throughout the meetings that he's held so far. Now, many of these promises and pledges will require that he goes to Parliament to get some legislative agenda on course. Now, we talk about the Hustler Fund, the fertilizer subsidy, cutting on budget so that austerity measures are introduced, and bundling many more functions and taking them to the counties, this and many more. Aaron Cheruiyot is the majority leader in the Senate. He's also the senator for Kericho County. He joins me now. Good evening, Senator.
Good evening, Eric.
Thank you, Sana, for joining us. Let's begin straight up with everything that's happening. So the president nominates 51 members to join his new state departments. Those names are taken to Parliament, but people go to court. And the courts have basically said, halt this as we listen to the case before court. The LSK particularly says, if you look at the mix of the principal secretary nominees, it doesn't meet the gender threshold, it doesn't meet the regional balance threshold, among others. Now, when you look at that list yourself, as somebody who is in the Senate championing devolution, as a young legislator championing the youth, as somebody who is progressive, do you see what the LSK is talking about?
No, I do not agree with them. Especially on, well, you can debate on some of the issues that they're raising, whether it's been sufficiently achieved or not, but on many of the grounds upon which they are pegging their petition, you can say it's either a point of misinformation or they're just being cheeky about it. Let's deal with it one by one, Eric. When you talk about regional balance, that list, because I've taken time to read and establish the home counties of all the 51 PS nominees, they are spread in 41 out of 47 counties. The problem that LSK seem to be struggling with is they want to equate regional balance with tribe or something close to that, that if I don't see a particular mix of certain names from a particular region, then regional balance hasn't been achieved. But when you have a list, Kenya has 47 counties. Out of 51, 41 out of the 47 counties are represented, then you tick the box of regional balance. When you talk about, say, as a young person who's championing the youth agenda, the thing that I appreciate most in that particular list, well, I would have wanted maybe to see more young people, more than the number that's included. But you understand that there are more opportunities for young people to be considered into. But the thing that I celebrate in this particular list is that traditionally, how we've been cultured as Kenyans, is that I don't believe there is a state department that is more important or more lucrative than another. But the one state department that people have been accustomed to look out for, which is a state department for interior, where power rests upon, has been handed over to a young person.
By young, what do we mean?
Raymond Omolo should be around 40 or 42 at most. That's a fairly young person when you consider government operations, especially.
When you consider that the Constitution recognizes 35
of
and
course,
below
35 is youth. But when you talk about also at the level of our peers, especially at that particular state department, to trust it in the hands of a 42, 43-year-old, then we would say it's in the hands of a young person. Of course, many people will have wished that you have under 35s in these particular postings. But remember one thing, if you read the wordings of the Constitution, and actually I'm going to the other box or area upon which LSK is criticizing this list on the issue of gender, it is not specific that for every appointive position, let's say cabinet on its own, PSS on its own, CASs and whatever other position that it's at. I think the reading and the understanding of many people, a body could as well include your entire spread of government, such that at the end of all the appointments that you have done, whether it's cabinet ministers, PSs, CASs, representatives and heads of state corporations, then you have a wholesome look at it and say, does it give a reflection? I think that will be a good and a fair point upon which to judge the administration and say whether they have ticked this gender equation.
Senator,
but
hold on, Senator. So far, we have nominees to the cabinet. 27, not even 25.
25.
Let's go.
No, is it 25 or 24?
The cabinet level portfolios.
Yes. Oh, okay, yeah. 27. Takes it to around 27. Right? Yeah.
And then we look at the 51 PS nominees. That is already
51 plus 27, almost 80.
The most influential level of government.
Yes,
right?
That's true.
At
that's
cabinet
true.
and principal secretary level.
Yes, that's
now,
true.
if those two have not met the gender threshold, are you telling me that now we should expect that ambassadors are the ones that are going to fill the gender threshold?
They will. Don't worry.
The CSs are going to be the ones that fill the gender threshold.
Eric.
This sounds to me like it's more of tokenism then that we should be expecting instead of merit.
No. Don't imagine for a second that, let's say, the head of a state corporation, say like Kenya Ports Authority or Kenya Pipeline or any of these KenGen, that they are less important. In fact, some of these, and you know this for a fact, some of these state corporations have got budgets that are bigger than even what a cabinet secretary for some of the ministries does handle. And in terms of their importance to the economy of a country, they are hugely important as well. Therefore, I don't think it's accurate to argue and say that it's only cabinet and PSS that you get to your span of influence and say that if you haven't appointed sufficient women, then you haven't granted the opportunity to run government. I don't think that's accurate. Eventually, when you look at it maybe in another 3 or 4 months, of all the appointments that will have been done, it will almost be at an equilibrium. We will achieve that gender question. So it's not something to
Senator,
worry. Yeah.
That you sit here today as a senator, not as member of the executive, as senator, as with your oversight role.
Yes.
Now you're looking at lists that are coming to Parliament. Lists from the cabinet, which is an organ recognized in the Constitution, has not met the gender threshold. Principal secretaries, which is a second level and layer of government, has not met the constitutional threshold. And what I'm hearing you doing, Senator, is you're excusing the government and saying, yeah, I'm hoping that the next list they bring, they are going to meet the gender threshold. Is that you doing your job, or is that you?
In fact, there's a principle that we need to agree upon, and which is what I beg you to understand. Why? As I oversight, where this administration will go wrong, I'll be on the forefront to say, on this one I do not agree with, because either it's not constitutional, or for one reason or the other, it goes against certain tenets of our either legislations and the rest. But on this issue of gender, I have told you that my reading and my understanding, and the proper understanding of it, is that, and I can pull it off a constitution because I didn't carry mine, but I have it in soft copy. It's not for every appointive position, such that you say for the out of every list that you pass, it must be. It speak of appointive body. If you speak, say, of the appointments that will have been done in another 2 or 3 months in his government as a whole, the entire institution, then you should be able to tick through all the list and say he has done his ambassadors, he has done his head of state departments and corporations, he has done his PSS list, and he has done what is in cabinet. Then do it wholesomely and look whether that has achieved. I do not hold the narrow view that it should be for every list, any particular list that is drawn, because I want to believe, by the way, at a particular point, there'll be a list that will have more, for whatever reason, will have more women than men. Then you come to achieve the equilibrium at a point where you look at it, government as a whole.
So it's about
because
wholesome.
It's an appointive body.
Okay.
Same case can be handled even for Parliament, for example, and say, this debate about what Parliament is supposed to legislate on the 2/3 gender rule. There have been debates, and each of the times that we have tried to come up with the legislation on how to achieve this thing, whether it's parliament corporately, or the two houses done differently. Because if you do the two houses differently, then Senate is almost on the verge of achieving it. Because remember, we have almost 18 women that are nominated, and so all you need is about 3 or 4 women elected, and that we have always nearly achieved. I think we were short last Senate by 1 or 2 women senators only. On this one, we are also short by 2 alone. But if you flip it and take it to the National Assembly, because of the kind of numbers that they have, then the disparity and then the difference between the 30% that you need to obtain of whichever gender that is least to get the gender principle right is difficult to achieve in the National Assembly. Therefore, many of the people that have presented legislative proposals, including actually National Gender Commission, want Parliament to be looked at corporately so that you are able to achieve it. So
there you go. So the spirit of the Constitution which you're quoting, and even the National Gender Commission which you're quoting, are looking at institution.
Yes.
Parliament, not representatives of the people.
Yes.
So Parliament as a corporate entity,
yes,
and look at it and see gender representation. Because Parliament is an institution. County assemblies are an institution. And each county assembly is not looking at 47 of them.
Yes,
it's each
that's
county
true.
assembly.
That's true.
Now apply the same and then go to the cabinet and say,
when you
cabinet,
do cabinet
is an institution.
You will look at the executive as an institution, because that's where
the cabinet is an institution.
He is making
Constitution.
appointments. Remember, he's making appointments. It's the same person or head of executive that does appointments for cabinet ministers, PSS, ambassadors, head of state corporations. Hence, you can look at it that particular way. I wish if we get to a particular point and maybe we want to be more descriptive and by the way, don't get me wrong, I would wish even we were more prescriptive in our constitution making process and said, for any list that it proposed, then let's achieve it that way. It will be something that's more progressive. But as it is, and in strict compliance with the Constitution as drafted, then it is the executive as a body corporate. Not for every list that you get, it must get that particular a third principle.
Let's cascade it then to the area that you directly deal with as the Senate, as protector and promoter of devolution. Several county assemblies are rejecting lists that are sent to them by governors, and even voters are going to court to challenge the nominees for governors. Nakuru County is an example. Nairobi is another example, and several others.
Yes.
And it's all because of representation, either youth, gender, or communities.
Minority groups.
Yes.
That's why, and this is an emerging space which I have tried to apply my mind on, because I don't believe it is right that we went to the polls on the 9th of August this year. Today is the 15th of November. 3 months down the line, a simple exercise, such as just appointing your members of a county executive committee together with a chief officer and chief officers, and you know this is the heart of your operation as a county government. As we speak today, I think hardly you would struggle to get 10 county governments that have succeeded to successfully pass the 10 county executive committee members. There is hardly, I don't know of any county executive that have succeeded to pass their chief officers. And the reasons are what we are actually discussing. Therefore, as a lawmaker, this is an area that I have personally developed keen interest in, that we want to legislate and maybe make it a bit more descriptive, so that you begin to appreciate what is these things that the court keep on identifying and saying, yeah, this voter has come before us and it's right. On many accounts, I have seen, like I think for the Nakuru issue, it's on minority. I haven't seen any on gender, by the way. It's mostly on the issue of youth and minority. That there is no representation of young people, there is no representation of minority groups, and you know this can be argued across all the 47 counties, because actually there's no county in Kenya that doesn't have a minority group. Say maybe where there might be difficulties are places like Nairobi, because it's difficult to justify what you would say, what exactly passes for a minority. But maybe And I think this is now a challenge to us, especially as Senate, because we are the ones who do legislations that are specific to counties, to come up with the legislation. And this is something that we are even discussing already. And I've challenged my colleagues who sit in the devolution committee to look at this area with interest. Because, you know, a governor has only 60 months to either transform or sink a county. If you remove the last 8 months, because in an election year, between January and August, there's hardly any work that, goes on. Yeah. And you lose 3 or 4 months, like we've already lost, then that gives you 12 months. Then it means as a county governor, you're only governing for 4 years.
Yep.
That is assuming, by the way, that by December 31st, most of the governors will have succeeded in passing their county executives and chief officers. So it's an area that we need to develop legislation and define what is it that passes for this, perhaps even answer the question that we were discussing earlier. The issue of gender, is it on specifically the county executive committee, the 10 of them, such that you must have 3 from either gender, when you cascade down to the chief officers, and also this issue of minority. How do you identify minorities in a particular county? Maybe we need to set the criteria for them, because we are increasingly becoming a litigious society. And the courts also, and I have no problem with them doing it, because remember, I come from a coalition that campaigned on the platform of allowing the courts to do that which they consider to be right. And they shouldn't be critiqued. We can disagree with them. I feel the pain of the county residents, actually, that for one reason or the other are forced now to make do with county executive committee members of previous administration that was either voted out or members who haven't been, you know, now as a governor, if you're forced to stay with the CECs that were there and they used to work for your predecessor, and chances are 99% of the time you have not given them the job, what motivation do they have to work? So they only report, and you cannot fire them, you cannot discipline them, because these are people who are
basically there's no activity.
There is hardly any activity in any county government.
Then, Senator, do you think we should do away with this vetting?
No. It's important. It's important.
Why is it important?
It's important because, first of all, it helps you understand who's this candidate that has been nominated, either at the national or at county level. And secondly, and I have taken time to scan through a few of the county assembly reports, because I just developed keen interest around how county assemblies operate. And there is an increasing question where you're finding the county assemblies pointing out certain CEC nominees that have been rejected, not on account of that they don't meet education qualification or the rest, but either a governor has pointed them to a docket where they don't necessarily have the qualifications for. And how do they get to tell about this? Is during this vetting process, because you're given, okay, Eric, you've been nominated to be CEC for agriculture. What plans do you have for agriculture in this particular county? How will you raise funds? How will you have our extension officers? Blah, 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 blah. If you realize that somebody is struggling, then you don't approve. So much as it is tedious, I think it is necessary. The only thing we need to discuss is how do we shorten this process. For sure, I didn't know that 3 months can fly as quickly as they have done. Because honestly, between 90 days, we are past the 100th day since we had elections on the 9th of August.
Yep.
And 100% of the counties are only at the stage of CECs. Now imagine, at what point do you do your chief officers? After that, you do your directors. By the time you're doing that, 1.5 years is gone. That's really unfortunate.
You're starting to think about the next budget.
Yeah, you're probably thinking about the next election. So what we must think about is perhaps maybe make the process a bit more clearer in law, especially on identification of minorities and youth. What will constitute a proper selection criteria? Make it a bit more descriptive, and it's something that we can
Senator,
do.
It sounds to me that we are approaching an emergency phase of this situation. It's developing into a crisis.
Actually, it
and
is.
as Senate Majority Leader,
Yeah.
you're saying perhaps maybe
We must. We must.
You should be speaking today to the nation and saying, this is a position that we
let me
have
pick my
taken.
wordings right. This is something that we have to do. And I will be writing actually to the Council of Governors, because it's the wearer of the shoe that knows how badly it pinches. We want to get their opinion on this and the challenges that they're getting from each of the 47. We have watched, you know how Parliament works, Eric, is that on many occasions you develop law based on how you've analyzed the situation. But during the public participation phase, it's important to get the views and the feedback of the user of that particular legislation. COG, or Council of Governors, are the main users of this. They are the people whose problems we want to address. And maybe if we address and get it right at the county assembly, then the same can be used even at the national government, such that we would not now be having this debate of has the PSS and the CSS list met the gender question, inclusion, and the rest. Because also, there's also another issue that's emerging. You have seen this amendment bill trying to increase the number of counties.
We're coming to that.
When you ask the members that are fronting this, they tell you that even in consideration of CECs alone, an entire 2 or 3 sub-counties have been left out, or maybe one, yet you form 30 or 40%
of the population
of that particular county. But because maybe of how you voted, and this comes across in counties like, say, which county can I pick? Say a county like Migori will be easy. This is a county that has got 2 main communities. Politically, they don't seem to align in a particular direction, and therefore it is considered that when formulating your county executive committee membership, that you're told that you guys never even voted for us in the first place, yet they are residents of that particular county. So this is something that we must address also as Senate and define it, so that the same way there is a conversation about we need to create a feeling of inclusion across the country, even in our county governments, we need to have the same. I read the article that was written by one of the county governors in the weekend dailies about how the new administration and the appointments they are making. But further down the comments, something actually pricked my curiosity. Somebody went on to remind the governor that even in their own appointments, and this is a governor now serving his 2nd term, that even you in your appointments, this particular area, we've never had either even a ward administrator or a sub-county.
We have never been part of your government.
You've never been part of your administration, which is a good thing. It's not something to be worried about, Eric, by the way. It tells you that you have a society that enjoys the benefits of our constitution. And people are beginning to point out and say, no, this is not how to
so
run
people
an
are more
administration.
aware.
People are becoming more and more aware, which is a good thing.
The question to you then, Senator, is having served for the length that you've served in the Senate, having gone to the counties, having listened to the people, and now seeing this proposal of a bill to be taken to Parliament for a constitutional amendment to increase the number of counties, would you support or would you say no?
No, I wouldn't support it in the form and text that they have brought.
Why?
What I will support them is to achieve that which they want, but differently. I have told you, if you listen to all these members that are pushing this bill, it's the question of inclusion. It's a question of resource allocation. It's the question of being secluded in decision making. We must come up, and we will actually come up with legislation this particular term that ensures that all the unique features that are in our different counties, because in the counties that are monolithic, you don't get to see this challenge. But in the counties that, sometimes even not necessarily the large counties, say go to a county like Lamu, one of the smallest counties, actually the smallest together with Isiolo, but Lamu East and Lamu West, culturally different by religion, different by communities, and each time, you remember the problems they had in the first round of county government, that it led even to lives being lost. After that, there have been some form of calm, but listening to their leaders, And they are part of the people that are speaking about this, that despite the fact that you are small, we still feel that you need to split us even further, even if we become a county of one constituency. It's not the geographical size that people are looking for. It is something...
It is to feel included
they
in
want to
decision
feel
making.
part and parcel.
Yeah.
If you listen to the say the members of parliament from Kuria, East and West, who are also saying that we are big champions of this because we want to be treated different from Migori, it's not just for the heck of it to be called Kuria County or something like that. They feel that for the last 3 administrations of that particular county, they haven't enjoyed the fruits of devolution. So the challenge,
so what's your solution?
The challenge on our part, and this is what we will do this particular session of the Senate, is that we will become more prescriptive, not just descriptive, in our legislation. And say, if you're running a county government, for example, one of the ways that we want to... I am a big supporter of, and I've seen the communication from controller of budget about Ward Development Fund. Ward Development Fund that is being mirrored on CDF, and you understand the whole politics about it, or it's not constitutional. Don't look at the small nuance about who manages it, whether it's a member of county assembly or whoever. Look at the bigger question that it intends to solve. If you have Ward Development Fund, and I support it, you are at least sure that to the percentage that will have been dedicated to Ward Development Fund, each ward and each village, because you know the problem we are having is that leaders also are not rising up to the occasion. Because if you listen to also those who are critiquing it, are saying there's no even guarantee that even if you break this money to the ward level, every village will enjoy equally. So you know, you may find ourselves that after passing ward fund, then there's a further even proposal to say, fund. Let's go to clan or village, you know, that kind of a thing. But at least, if you break it down to ward level, you are sure that if a county has 20 wards, each of those 20 wards, because for sure, Eric, as weird as it sounds, there are parts of certain counties that have never seen a single benefit of devolution. Because of either their political choice or how the governor perceives them, how they voted in the last election, and that shouldn't be the case. That is one of the proposals that we shall be coming up with. Secondly, by way of public petitions, you know, petitions are one of the ways through which Senate has been able to solve many of the challenges that are in our county governments. And we have had devolution committee visit as many as, I think, almost all the 47 counties to respond to county-specific petitions on certain matters. We shall be citing governors that are perpetuating neglect of certain corners of their counties on account of either politics or whatever the reason might be. And we shall come hard on them, and we shall take the necessary measures, including, up to and including, naming those particular county governors, and perhaps even coming up with recommendations that other state agencies that are charged with responsibility, either the Office of the Ombudsman, for example, that has got powers to check on counties and state bodies and push them to do the right thing. We shall be making recommendations to them so that we ensure that this feeling that is beginning to creep in our county governments completely disappears and wanes off, because it's not a good thing, and it's a challenge that we see in almost all our 47 county governments.
So, Senator, what I'm hearing you say is we need more legislation, more prescriptive legislation, and to cure some of these issues. And
enforcement of existing. It's not purely for lack or for want of effective legislation. Part of what is missing is also just enforcement, to ensure that we as the body that is charged, mandated with the oversight of county governments, ensure that we push as hard as possible, but together with other state agencies. Because this is even an ethics issue. Because if you are elected as a county governor and you used to banish an entire population, it puts into, this is something that
issues
ESCC
about your ethics, yes. So then it sounds to me like it's political bad manners, which you cannot cure by legislation.
Legislation alone, exactly. That's a point. And as Senate, you know, it begins actually by somebody even a higher body, more than a county assembly, speaking up against it. You know, the reason why our county assemblies, unfortunately, might not be able to do this, some of the beneficiaries sit in the same county assemblies. And chances
So
are they are in
voices.
the majority. So you divide, and you know how democracy works. The majority have their way. Eventually, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you speak. But a bigger body, say like the stature of a Senate, if you speak and say in county XYZ, Governor so-and-so is encouraging politically unclean behavior by maybe excluding certain sections of a population or part, either the minorities or the rest, then you draw, first of all, the nation's attention to it. And secondly, the national institutions, say like ESCC, Office of the Ombudsman, and some of these
Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
Commission on Human Rights, you draw the attention to that particular matter, and people are then they are able to enforce something, and that section of the population is able to benefit.
So let me recap what we've heard from the Senate Majority Leader this evening. That the Senate Majority Leader will go back to the Senate and they will write to the Council of Governors on this issue of nominations.
Yes.
And hear the pain that the governors are going through and the challenges they're experiencing. On the issue of communities that feel underrepresented or excluded in positions of leadership, that you will also be seeking a solution to this, either by listening to the people and by coming up with more stricter legislation on it. But on the matter of the bill, the proposed bill in the National Assembly, you're saying this is not the way to go.
Which or splitting or creating additional counties.
5 more counties.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't agree. I don't agree with.
I
I don't think that's the right way to go. We can still achieve what they want differently without having to create the burden. You know, unfortunately, Eric, counties also come with their cost, and we still haven't been able to crack this issue of what percentage of, you know, unfortunately, in almost all our counties, the budgetary allocation that goes to development is in the upwards of 25% to below, actually, of all the funds that we devolve. Over 60% goes to recurrent, sometimes even 70% in other counties because of huge wage bills. And it's something that is of big concern to us. So they may not necessarily achieve what they want, because even if you create another county, remember it comes with a cost to it, and yet we are not talking about an endless pool of resources as a country. These are finite resources, so the more you subdivide, it becomes even a bigger burden. You don't necessarily achieve that which you intended in the first place. So we will be able to address their concerns, but without having to increase the number of county governments in their country.
Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheruiyot is my guest this evening. We're talking about the work of the Senate in checking the role of the executive and also in making sure that they protect and uphold the ideals of devolution in the country. One of the big accusations that the Senate has faced is a failure to push through the operationalization of the Equalization Fund. I want to ask the Senate Majority Leader that question after we take this short break. Keep it here.